When I went into medicine and I, as a woman, saw there was no talk about periods, there was no talk about polycystic ovaries. The other thing is endometriosis. Another thing that an awful lot of women suffer from, but very badly treated. So what happens in perimenopause is periods shouldn't be 3 to 4 days. They shouldn't be 7, 10, 11, 12 days. So this was something that was never spoken about to men or women. Thyroid problems are huge in women in particular, but we do get it in men. There's a hormone control centre on the top of your nose on everyone, and it controls every single muscle. Hormones are everything, and that's why I came out and spoke about them, because I train as an endocrinologist, which is all, the endocrine system is basically the hormonal system.
Any advice for anybody that's listening, perhaps that have erectile dysfunction, perhaps that have the intimacy problems in their relationship?
I think you've
Series 11 of the Dig podcast. I can't believe Series 11. I didn't even know how to press record on that very first episode, but we are back for you, the listener. Real lives, real moments. That's what we need. We need real stories, things that people are going through in everyday life, brought straight to you, but with, most importantly, actionable advice. And that's what all our guests are going to bring to you in Series 11. This is real lives and real moments, so we are going to be covering sensitive topics, and I just want to give you a heads up about that. Welcome to the Dig podcast. Dr. Mary Ryan is joining me on the Dig podcast today, and Mary is a consultant physician and endocrinologist. Now, I admit I had to Google it because I was like, what does endocrinology mean? And for those who already know, I apologise, but for those who don't, not only does Mary educate people through her events and her books and her online platforms, I then realised the vast scope that she does as a doctor. So she specialises in diagnosing and treating disorders of the endocrine system. The endocrine system, for those who don't know, and I'm going to hold my hand up, I was like, what system is that in our body? It's made up of glands and organs that produce hormones. How important is that in our lives? Like, we hear it all the time, hormones and how it affects our lives and how we behave and are, but do we really understand them? Do we really know what's going on? I know I am guilty of not really knowing, but since I started to follow Mary online, I am very much more educated than I would have been before I started to listen to her. And she's going to help you today as well. And when you go onto the website for Mary, and I'm not going to talk all day because I want her to talk to you, you will see everything that she does and her qualifications. And she's also a lecturer, and she's making an impact in the lives of others. But on the podcast today, we're going to find out about her story and her life and everything that's went on, as well as her being a doctor, because it's real lives, real moments, and people have a life behind their profession. I think that's important we all remember that. Welcome to the Dig podcast, Mary.
Thank you, Carla. I love being here.
Oh, and
we finally got to be together.
Did. I know we had technical issues for those listening. We were supposed to do it on Zoom, but now we're face to face, which is
much nicer.
Much nicer and even better. You are some woman.
Thank you.
And I watched you online, and I was trying to do some research before our prep call so that I really felt like I knew who you were, but I didn't know who you were because I didn't know all the things that have happened in the life behind a doctor.
Yes.
And you do you want to tell us, before we dive into the hormones and all of that, who is Mary Ryan? What's been going on and your family? And I suppose take us back a wee bit.
Of course. So I'm a country girl that had a wonderful father who died unfortunately last year, Sean Ryan, who was, I think, a real rock in my life. And he was just 89 and he died last year. So that's been a tough year. And my mother was a teacher in the local school, primary school teacher. So I suppose that was the foundation for me. Daddy was also a business person. So he went from the age of 14, as people left back in the 30s then, and he climbed all the way up to general manager of Castlebranch, which makes all the road signage. So I was always looked up to him in a huge way. And then my poor husband, Eamon, died suddenly when my twin boys were 8 and my little girl was 5. So my father really stepped in and was the father figure for them, and my mother as well. So, you know, we were a very close knit family. So to lose Eamon suddenly was an awful shock. We'd only moved into our new house that we thought was the house of our dreams. And what's terrible is when you lose someone, for anyone listening, you know, if you're young, I was only in my early 40s, and when you lose someone suddenly like that, you just think, my dream is gone. What am I going to do now? You know, and then I had 3 kids that I had to think about and move on. You don't really have time for yourself. So my dad and mum, of course, stepped in. They're 3 wonderful kids. I'm being so blessed. But one of the things I did do was I did go and got a psychologist and spoke to them, because I was concerned about, I wanted to be the best I could be. I couldn't be crying all the time with the kids. I had to go back to work. My patients were so good to me, as were the hospital. But I just wanted to, you know, it was very formative years for the children, and I didn't want them to be looking back and lost. So I went to a psychologist, absolutely brilliant, spoke about how I would deal with the grief, but also he suggested, you know, I was thinking, will I get counselling for the kids? And he said, no, kids never look back. They always look forward. It's only adults look back, which was a real learning curve for me. And that honestly helped me hugely, even in my whole profession. So I think all of us, Warren Buffett said the best investment is for ourselves. And I think we all should look at that. But that's how I got through. And I think it made me very strong. Through pain, we grow. So it was really, really tough, but thank God I came through it. But losing Dad, as I said, last year was a big knock. And I think maybe I probably grieved for Eamon as well, because, you know, the kids were so young, you had to just keep going. Maybe losing Daddy last year was just a huge wrench, but probably because I probably grieved for both at that time too. I think that was it. So look, you have to make the best of life. I'm always one of these, like yourself, Caroline. I believe in really, you know, grasping life, carpe diem. I really believe in that. So I've always just, you know, and my father would be very similar actually. So we're just go for gusto and, you know, really, really do the best we can do for people. Love my job, love what I do, and adore my children.
I know you do. We're going to talk about your kids, but that piece of like that bit of a life moment when you lose your partner and you've got wee ones, there'll be people listening that either know somebody that's happened to and they're still struggling, or maybe it's them themselves. You took that time to go find out how you could get through this with the psychology piece or whatever. So
Yeah.
I suppose the message there is don't bury that need for whatever.
Oh,
you know.
totally, because it was real dark days. You know, you really are in a hole, and yet you've got 3 little ones depending on you, and your patients depending on you. So you couldn't let all those people down. So I had to make myself as strong as I could be. And I was, of course, talking to family, but they could only listen to so much, you know. And I kept talking. I remember my dad, in a good way, said after 3 months, Mary, you've got to keep going. But I still had all this hurt and anger and, you know, that I had to come out. So I said, I have to seek help. And that's when I sought the help of the psychologist. And it was just really, really good, because he listened to me. You know, he dealt with, you know, we all have little issues that you have a safe space to deal with. But really importantly, he told me about how best to bring up my children. And that is the best gift you can give your children, is to give them the gift of self-esteem. So telling them, unlike, I mean, our parents, they were amazing, but it wasn't done to them. But what I do with my kids, I'm sure you do the same, is tell them 100 times a day how wonderful they are, how brilliant they are, because that's self-esteem. Now, what's very important, what our generation don't do, is they don't correct them. They don't put the boundaries in. So it's about telling them how wonderful they are, fantastic they are, you can do what you like, but if you you know, put the boundaries in, don't be afraid to correct them if they do wrong. And that's real love. And that's what I sought to do. And Tony Humphreys actually was a psychologist I went to, amazing man, and he's got a lovely book on self-esteem for children as well, I'd highly recommend. But I just think as parents, we're not taught how to be parents. You know, we just teach how we parent, how we were brought up ourselves. And while our parents were brilliant, they weren't taught either. So it's no harm to go and find out, am I doing right? You know, because you're really responsible for this child and, you know, the next generation. So I just wanted to make sure I was doing it right, particularly with sort of the cross I had on my shoulders after losing a father and, you know, their father and my husband. So, you know, that it really, really helped me.
Well, we're going to link that book in the show notes for anybody that wants to look after that, because I did speak to somebody recently and they had said some around the same kind of scenario of losing a partner. They said they didn't want their kids to just see mummy sad all the time, and then in fact there's this kind of what you're saying.
Yes,
well.
totally.
It's hard. Like, it is a hard. Like,
and everyone listening in will say it's one of the toughest things, but you just have to get through. But you need help to get through. And I think no matter how strong we are, and I am mentally, thank God, strong, but at the same time we're all human. And I think that's one thing we all forget. None of us are superhuman. And when we're hurting, we've got to go seek help.
I know, it's good advice.
And all of us need direction.
I know, and you're a doctor as well, so, and I know in a specialised field, but as a doctor, I suppose that advice to reach out to perhaps a
Yes.
medical professional.
Yeah, totally, totally. None of us know it all.
Yeah.
We can't possibly know it all. So it's important that, you know, when you feel you need help, go for it.
Yeah.
And never be too proud or afraid to do it.
I know,
Yeah.
it's a huge life thing, but,
Mm.
and you have 3 gorgeous children. Now, what ages are they now?
So Mihal and Sean are 20 going on 21 this month, or next month, the 22nd of February, please God. And Una has just turned 18, my little girl.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So I still call them children, even though I know
That's right.
yes, absolutely. But they're lovely. They're really lovely. They've turned out to be lovely, lovely young adults, even though I see them as children all the time. But they're wonderful. And I think, yeah, I just, you put yourself into your children. All mothers do. And yeah, no,
And you
I'm
said,
very happy.
when you came in, you said, and he's, I said, was that one of your sons on the phone again? And he's just he's just lovely. He's just,
Yeah.
but I would say that. I was like, well, we all feel like that about our children.
Yes, we do.
But you know, you're a wee bit biased about
Yes,
your own.
of
But
course.
thank you so much again for listening to the Dig podcast. And don't forget, if you like listening each week, if you love our guests, please hit that follow button if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe. And that means even more people can find out about the Dig podcast, and we can keep reaching out to the guests each week and bringing you some inspirational stories with actionable advice. Now we're going straight back to our amazing guest. It's so lovely that they're such a, you know, like, I know with your husband, it's great to have them with you now and all that.
Sure, they help you through.
Mary, and now your work as a doctor, so it's led you to be very specialised now in the field that you're in.
Yeah.
And then you're obviously very, for anybody who follows you online, very proactive online about educating your audience about all things hormone health and everything else that goes with that. So I was looking through, I was like, what am I going to talk to you about? There's so many different topics that we could dive deep into each one. But I suppose for the first time that you're on the Dig podcast, not to say it's the last, but the first one, I suppose, if we took an overall look at hormone health, I've written, because you have written a book, is it called?
Yes.
It's all about,
It's probably your hormones.
It's probably your hormones.
Yeah.
So it probably is our hormones, but what is hormone health? What is hormones? What are hormones?
So hormones are everything, and that's why I came out and spoke about them, because I train as an endocrinologist, which is all, the endocrine system is basically the hormonal system. And there's a hormone control center on the top of your nose, on everyone, right up here, on everyone's nose, and it controls every single muscle. We forget we're skeletons covered entirely in muscle. The heart is a muscle, the bowel is a muscle, the brain is a muscle. So all of your muscles, all of your organs are controlled by hormones. And this is something that wasn't taught to people. And I think in the medical profession, we didn't educate the public enough because we were so busy. But I think that when I went into medicine and I, as a woman, saw that, you know, there was no talk about periods, there was no talk about polycystic ovaries, you know, women were coming in for fertility help, but really they should have been caught 20 years earlier, and they'd suffered a lot in the meantime. And then perimenopause and menopause wasn't spoken about it either. So I think that when I saw that, I said, you know what, I've got to get out there and speak. And sometimes it's better to talk to the public and let them move the mountains, because yes, I was lecturing in the University of Limerick and I trained in Trinity, and they're fabulous, fabulous institutions, but sometimes you have to educate the public and bring them with you, and they will move the mountain, and that's what I did. But hormones, to go back to your question, they control absolutely everything. They control your emotions, whether you cry, whether you sleep. And I think as women in particular, but men also, if you're having an off day or if you're a virus, that'll affect your hormone control center, and then you're going to get the aches and pains, because remember, hormones control the muscles. So you have aches and pains, it might be virus, it might be the fact you didn't sleep right. That little hormone control center needs to recharge the very same way as your phone, the very same as your computer. And I think if people knew more about why they could have that holistic approach and know that you've got to nourish it well. Why do we all say you have to eat healthily? Well, you've got to nourish that hormone control center because it's controlling everything. You've got to rest it because it's controlling everything. You've got to balance. Why do we all say do meditation, do yoga, relax? Because your adrenal glands are controlling cortisol. High cortisol causes inflammation. We know that that can lead to cancer and all disease. So the more we relax, yes, of course, we're all busy, but I think we all have to know how to, you know, relax and recharge, no more than myself, because I'm always going.
Always.
But I am good at switching off because I know it's important. So, you know, in the evenings when I switch off, I switch off. I always tell my patients, do the rota with the kids. I've always had the kids do the rota, because your kids are, you know, much younger than us, so they have buckets of energy and they do the rota every evening.
Tell us about that now. What do you
So,
mean?
So, for example, I always did this from when the kids were from 8 on. I had one did the dishwasher, emptied it, filled it. The other did the table chairs and made the lunches, and the other then did the washing machine, put it out, filled it, and did the hoovering if it needed to be done. So I always divvied up the duties. Now I come from a farming background, and we were always out on the farm, so I suppose I saw it there, but I really needed it because I was minus my husband. I had a full-time job, and I had 3 kids, so I always divvied up the jobs, but it gave me time to relax. And if I was relaxed, I was recharged, I wasn't irritable with them, my hormones were in good shape, I wasn't sick because hormones control the immune system. So, and it taught them as well that I loved myself, because in looking after yourself and putting yourself first, which very few women do, you're not loving yourself, and you're the mentor of your child. And if they see you running around the place, they're going to do the same, and they're not going to look after themselves down the road. So it's so important that we give our little children jobs, even if they've the leaving cert tomorrow, they can still do the job. I often hear women saying to me when I say that, oh no, she's doing the leaving cert or he's doing the leaving cert, but he can be on the phone for half an hour, so can't he do the job in 5 minutes? And that's what I always say. And it's empowering your children as well, because I know from my background that one of the reasons I'm so capable is because I was out there, feeding cattle, counting them, feeding the animals. And it was, I had to do it before I cycled into school, and I didn't care whether it was junior cert leavings or whatever, I had to do it. And it meant that I just had to get on with it, and whether it was raining, snowing, I just had to cope. And those coping skills are very, very important in later years. So I wanted to pass that on to my children. And I always say to women and men that come into me when they're exhausted, and I see a lot of people with chronic fatigue because everyone is overdoing it, that their hormone control center is tired and they've aches and pains in their muscles, they're not sleeping well, because if your hormones are off, your muscles won't go into deep relaxation, so they don't sleep. And then they might have sweats, mightn't be anything to do with menopause, it might be just their adrenals are tired, so they've sweats. They might have terrible headaches because the hormones are down at the nervous junction around the head. So in all these areas, if we recharge and listen to our bodies more and love ourselves more, we can really help ourselves. So I do it in my own house.
Wow, there's so much advice there for looking after our kids as well as ourselves, but it all goes hand in hand, is what I hear there.
Yeah, exactly.
And like when we talk about hormone health, in my head, and this is wrong, I know, I always associate that with a woman, but
Yes.
that's not.
No.
Men have the hormones,
Men have
obviously.
hormones as well, absolutely. Like, obviously, we spoke a lot about, and I've spoken a lot about periods, menopause and everything, but men have hormones as well. They've got the same pituitary gland as women, and hormones drive all their muscles as well. And I see a lot of men who get burnt out as well. And that's why I'm always saying, we have to teach men and women to love themselves, nourish themselves. The best way we can have people healthily is if you take control of your own health. You have personal responsibility of controlling your own hormonal health, because hormones control everything. And nourish yourself by eating really healthily, pick the right healthy foods, stay away from the processed as much as you can, because sugar does cause inflammation, and I deal with diabetes every day of the week. Try and avoid being overweight, getting out and exercising 1 hour a day will add 3 hours extra to our lives down the road. So we need to remember that. So by loving ourselves, men and women, and listening to our bodies and looking after ourselves, and the younger the better. Don't be leaving until your 70s. Start now in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and eat healthily, sleep, get your sleep. Sleep is so important. I cannot survive without sleep. Like, I go like a trooper like yourself, but I do plug in. I'm very good to be in bed for 10, half 10, and I get my 8 hours sleep.
Talk us about sleep then. So give us some ways that people can start to have a healthier sleep pattern, Mary.
Okay, so melatonin is the hormone that controls sleep, right?
Melatonin.
So light drives serotonin, which is your happy hormone. That's why we all feel great and light. So we should technically try to go to bed early and up in the morning. So you remember the old Shano saying where early to bed makes people healthy, wealthy and wise. Well, the reason behind that is early to bed means that you're getting more light the following morning, because you're up early the following morning at 6, half 6, 7. And therefore you have more light to drive that hormone control center to produce serotonin, and the bowel also produces serotonin. And that's your happy hormone. So if you're up early, you have more serotonin. And then the melatonin production comes in the evening time as you begin to relax. So melatonin switches off serotonin, which is driving you, and basically it helps you to relax the muscles. So what I do myself is I only have 2 cups of coffee a day. Coffee is great, but I only have 2 because that excess caffeine is stimulating the adrenal glands, causing too much adrenaline, and you're going to be wired going to sleep. And so many people tell me, I'm wired, I can't switch off. But you have to start switching off at 8 o'clock in the evening and try to relax. So I often say to people, go in, lie on the couch, relax, and just do a bit of deep breathing or listen to a nice meditation. Louise Hay, I love her meditations, and they're free to download. And it just relaxes you, and try and get off that phone, because the phone, that's not, it's just really, by all means, if you find something relaxing, okay, but we should all do the phone limited and then on to relaxing. So you really have to, so for me, I start relaxing at 8 o'clock and I just begin to switch off, and I'm good at plugging in. I think I've taught myself how to relax and how to recharge. And when I go to bed, thank God, I sleep the whole night, which is wonderful. And I think that for me, I wake up and I'm energized the following morning. And I think I eat healthily. I'm very conscious of eating healthily. So I always have my porridge in the morning. I have my lovely sandwich full of chicken or tuna in the middle of the day. And then evening, I always have the 1 potato meat veg. I'm the real country eater.
You are.
And some slow cooker, I always say to women, is dead handy, because the kids can prepare it and it's ready for you in the evening when you go in, so you're not rushing in to make a dinner. So I think every way you can make your life easier, do, because you're more relaxed, you're not stressed, the adrenaline is just down, and the cortisol is down. So I think being, loving yourself and being in charge of yourself, and sort of, respecting your body, and just when you come in the evening, none of this flying around, because that's going to have the adrenaline high, and then you're not going to be able to sleep. Whereas if you are relaxed and you have the kids doing the stuff if they're around, and just try and make life as easy as possible, and keep wondering how more efficient I can be, at cutting corners, but still getting the job done.
And this is work. This is like, you have
Yeah.
to work at getting this in place. There
Yeah.
might be people listening going, "Oh, that's
Yeah.
unachievable," or "That's all right for her," saying, but it's not. You had a life with, as you say, without a partner, 3 kids and a job, and you tried to.
Totally.
So we need to do wee small things maybe first.
Totally. Like, one of the things, just for people listening, and I say this to parents when they're in front of me, like, I had to sit down with the kids and say, I can't take you to the 5 things every evening. They wanted swimming, they wanted soccer, they wanted camogie. And as a mother, you want to give them the best, but you can't be on the road 5 nights a week. It's not possible for the children or for you. So, you have to sort of say, well, I said, swimming is out of it. We'll do it when we go on holidays. And they can swim like fish. And they never went to swimming lessons, and I'm not a good swimmer, but they are brilliant. And so, that was one of the things we had to cut. And they did their camogie, they did their hurling, they did their music. But all the other things had to go. And they still turned out great. They can do them in college if they want, So I always say that to parents that even they say, I'm wrecked. And it is tiring. You come in from the door, you have the dinner, and next thing you're out, and you might be out for 2.5 hours with a child, taking them here, there, and everywhere. And I think as parents, we have to pull back, especially today, and say, no, you can't do all that. It's not possible. And just because the neighbour is doing it, that doesn't mean she or he is doing okay. They could be into me the following day wrecked, So I think we've got to take charge of our hormonal health and sort of, look after ourselves and forget about the neighbour. In Ireland, we think too much about what the neighbour does and what he does and what she does. Loving yourself means you take control of your own health. And by doing that, keep your boundaries. And, you're showing your children you're strong, that you really don't give a damn what other people think, which is a good thing. And that they will do the same. I think that's really important. Yeah.
So good. And
Yeah.
you do have to keep yourself in check, because you can lose the run of yourself saying, "Oh, they need to go to this." And the swimming thing is a big thing.
Yeah.
Like, swimming is a vocation to itself. Taking them to all the lessons. I hear mummies talking about the swimming thing all the time.
Totally. Yeah. Totally.
Hard going, and it is important, yes, but you have to, I suppose, like you say, weigh up what's going to keep you healthy.
Exactly.
Because we need to be at our happiest and our best for them.
Exactly.
I'm getting this. I need to take a look at my own life here. But so I suppose whenever it comes to, like, we're talking about being I suppose you hear that thing through around, oh, it's probably your hormones, whenever you are upset or you are. And now we know it is. There could be reasons why.
Yeah.
What would be the most, like, I suppose in your profession, the most thing that you would treat from people coming into you? What's or is there a wide range of
There is.
things?
So as I said, we would do a lot with heavy periods. So periods, we're never taught that periods shouldn't be 3 to 4 days. It shouldn't be 7, 10, 11, 12 days. way. So this was something that was never spoken about to men or women. And I think it's very important that we bring it out so the women can go and get help, and fathers, mothers can bring their daughters to the doctor early so that they can be treated. So like things like really heavy periods, that's going to drain somebody's hormone control center. And that child is, you take a girl that's 7, 8, 9 day periods, she's losing that amount of blood 1 week of her life, and she should only have 3 or 4 day periods, and therefore her pituitary gland is going to become tired. That controls the immune system. She then picks up glandular fever, which I see all the time, and then she can't get rid of it because it's tired, so it therefore becomes a chronic disease and chronic fatigue, which is where you get aches and pains, you're exhausted, you're lethargic, and thankfully that now can be treated. But these people come in, they're really type A personalities, brilliant at everything, real hard workers, but their hormones are all over the place because the hormone control center is exhausted. And you can get them right, but one of the things you have to teach them is to pull back, to look after themselves, not to be overdoing it. And so that I deal with that quite a bit. But that's what I'm saying. Heavy periods do cause problems down the road because the hormone control center shouldn't be working that hard for that period. Shouldn't be losing all that iron with all that oxygen. It's not good for those girls, and it does cause problems down the road. Again, it causes fertility problems if the periods are heavy, or if they're irregular, it might be polycystic ovary disease, which is so easy to treat and shouldn't be left with that. A girl's put on loads of weight and she's eating really healthily, but because the cysts on the ovaries are producing all this bad insulin, the bad insulin is making weight. So that girl throughout her teens and her 20s and 30s has all this weight, and she's there thinking, how can I get, her self-esteem is affected and her health is affected when it should have been sorted. So it's educating the public, and I think that's what I love doing, because we didn't do this in medicine. I think it's really important we tell parents so that they know when to bring their children into the doctor and when to get treated. The other thing is endometriosis. Another thing that an awful lot of women suffer from, but very badly treated, not spoken about, and periods were never spoken about. I know patients come in to me and say, I used to cover the period pampers with the loaf of bread. It was never spoken about. Should be spoken about. It's so important. It's part of evolution. We need sperm, we need eggs, we need men and women to continue generations. So why shouldn't we talk about sperm? Why shouldn't we talk about periods? So it's really important we open that conversation in a lovely, healthy way. The other thing we need to speak about is sex, because I would have women with vaginismus, and I had one woman during the week, and she told me that the reason that she and her husband have never consummated their marriage because if sex was such a dirty thing. And she's a fabulous woman, has done really well, but in her personal life she hasn't. And we will get that sorted for her. But we need to have these healthy conversations.
Is that
at home.
society
Years
ago?
Yes, I
taught
think
us
so.
that.
I think so. So it's important that we open it up. But even now, we need to open it up even more and talk about these things.
It is a wee bit hard,
isn't it? It is, yeah.
Aye.
And then, endometriosis is really painful periods, heavy periods. You get adhesions in the tubes, inflammation all around. But again, this can be prevented and treated early, and not leaving it till you decide to have a baby in your 30s, when you've gone through a whole load of pain and all that. So that sort of thing. Thyroid problems are huge in women in particular, but we do get it in men. And it's important people know that the symptom of an overactive thyroid is irritability, losing loads of weight, sweating. And you might be just hyperthyroid, you mightn't be menopausal or perimenopausal. A lot of people, could just be an overactive thyroid. Underactive thyroid then is you're putting on weight, your skin is dry, your hair is dry, and that's a real sign of underactive thyroid. Hashimoto's is the most common. You'll need to be on L-troxin for life, or thyroid hormone for life, but it's so treatable, and there's so much you can do with that condition to help yourself, like keeping the antibodies down, eating healthily, avoiding processed food, keeping gluten low, which is really avoiding processed food as much as you can, keeping the sugar low, taking selenium and zinc. So all of these things, but the public need to know about that to be able to help themselves. So I think that was the key thing. And then, as I told you when we were speaking earlier, Caroline, I felt it was important to talk about perimenopause and menopause, because I saw all the women suffering, and these women had suffered 20 years ago. Their marriages had gone by the wayside because they were like an antichrist. They were severely anxious. Their intimacy had completely gone in that time. And you heard those stories, and I felt it was really important to bring that out. So that's what made me go around and do all those hormone health lectures, which I did with Lorraine Keane, who's a lovely person. And she used to MC them. And she was the one that was celebrity. I wasn't. So if she was the MC, she gathered the masses and I educated them. That's the way I looked at it. So we got a call then from Joe Duffy. And he wanted me to come on the show because he was going to do a stint on menopause. And I was a bit frightened to go on Joe Duffy because I thought, oh my goodness, this could go, you know. And he said, no, I've 1.8 million listeners. You've got to come on this. So it took off from then. And then we've the whole menopause, you know, the education, the menopause hub. It's fantastic. And now it's become a normal conversation.
It has.
And partners and women know about it because men need to know about it just as much because they suffered as well when their partners were suffering and were irritable, snapping at them. And, you know, they needed to know as well. So I think it's important that we bring men into the equation as well and speak about them. So that was, and I brought out the book to educate more. And then the other thing I suppose is that erectile dysfunction is very important, is a common problem in men, not spoken about because we're a real macho society. But I think it's important we speak about that because there's men that suffer, very easy treated, but they shouldn't have to suffer alone. Some men have low testosterone. That means they have a low libido. That can be treated. So
how do you move past those awkward things that you think you can't even say the words, but if you could, your life could change? Any advice for anybody that's listening, perhaps that have erectile dysfunction, perhaps that have, you know, the intimacy problems in their relationship, both on a female and male, and they're actually too embarrassed to even talk about it together?
Yes.
How does people get past that?
I think you've got to go and find a doctor that you feel will listen. And if the first one doesn't listen, go to another one. I think that's really important. I'm a professor in the University of Limerick teaching medical students. And one of the things I do is communication has to be so important. For doctors is, you know, really, really important because people are shy. It's very intimate details. And, you know, sometimes we have to extract it from them. So a man might come in and say to me, the wife has given out about me in the bedroom. And I know straight away, oh, that's fine. No problem. We'll sort it. You know, they'll come at it another way. It mightn't be the wife giving out at all, but that's the way they say it. But I think it's important that they go and find someone that will listen. And if you're turned away the first time, go the second time because it's your life. We've only one life, remember, and we have to make it our best life. And only we are responsible for ourselves. So it's important to find a doctor that will listen to you and talk to you. And there is help out there for everyone. So for erectile dysfunction, it's so easy to treat. I see so many men that have it and it really is upsetting them and affecting their self-esteem, but so easy to treat. And not just older men, but younger men. I see men in their teens and their 20s, 30s, you know, so that's really important. The lady I talked about, vaginismus, common enough problem.
What is it?
It's so basically it's a very tight vagina. They can't have intimacy, or if they do, it's incredibly sore. Now you can get that around menopause because it's so dry, and those lubricants, the estrogen lubricants, are brilliant for that. But also can be because you had as the woman I saw where everyone spoke about sex and was dirty, and that's the reason in her case. So I'll have to get her psychological help. But I've done that before and they've done very well. So, you know, I remember a really bad case of a woman where, you know, sex was dirty and it was all just negative. And I got her to a psychologist and she now is flying it. And she came in and said, we're having the honeymoons of all honeymoons, which was lovely. It was really lovely.
Yeah.
But her partner was suffering as well. So, you know, it's really important, I think, that we get past that and we help those people, because that can be a reason why, you know, people get so depressed, get so low, you know. So it's really important that we listen to those people and seek out why they're feeling so unwell. It could be something that they think it's only me. No, it's not only you. It's, you know, all of us are human. I think sometimes people look at us and think she's not human. We are. We're all human. We all have feelings. We all have, you know, we've all lives going on. And I think everyone needs to realise that. And don't ever be afraid to say anything to any doctor.
Just taking a short break, guys, from our guest. We're going to be back really soon, but I want to let you know about our fabulous partner that we're partnering with for 10 full weeks, MCG Property Group. Managing a home project can feel so overwhelming, but what if you had someone by your side who's been immersed in the industry since childhood? Well, that's exactly what you get with MCG Property Group. Founder and MD Tanya is a second-generation property expert with over 15 years of experience. She grew up in the industry, so she knows every detail that goes into a successful renovation. Her construction project management service ensures that your project is done right, that it's on time, on budget, and with expert care. From builders to budgets to building control, MCG and Tanya handle it all so you don't have to. With MCG, you're not just hiring a service, you're partnering with a team, and they treat your home like their own. To find out more, visit the link in our show notes and how you can get in touch with the MCG property team. Thank you for listening, guys. Now we're going straight back to our amazing guest. And there will be people who'll still be afraid even after you send this. So I think that the more time I spend with you, the more I'm not afraid to say vagina. Or like you make me feel like it's okay to say it. But I think that if people surround themselves with people like you, perhaps it's an online community following you, hearing you give this information, other people in your field that speak like you, me and you both love Una O'Hagan and Morris Pharmacy. She was saying about all the wee difficult words and topics we had to talk about. And I recently, Una or Mary on the Dig podcast spoke to a lady called Hannah Saunders. And Hannah was sexually abused as a child. And she told that story very articulately and very much trying to give hope to others. But she said a thing about we have traditionally in the past, and this is kind of what me and you're talking about, been afraid to say to our kids, that's your vagina or that's your penis. And then how do we expect our kids to be able to tell us if something has happened in that way, if they're afraid to even say those words, because we've been afraid to say the words. So it was that opened my mind.
Absolutely.
I was like,
to do at a young age, in a nice, a thing to talk about in a young age in a very open way and not in a very respectful way.
Yes, and then that means when they get older, if there is issues, they're actually able to say about them as well. So we need to start with our kids, maybe too.
Totally. Oh, I think the mentoredom is huge. I mean, you're big into empowering women and men, and I am as well. And I think that's why, it's we've to lead from the front. So that, I always talk about sport. I think we've done a great job in the GA, but one of the things that we need to do more is to equalise it and support the women as much as the men in the GA. I know Mary McAleese is a wonderful woman that I did a podcast with actually, but she's very much involved in trying to make that happen, because I have a little girl that plays camogie, and we've often gone to hurling matches, and Una would be put on the backfield, and there, she's minor, and the under 10 boys would have the front field. It actually happened only recently at a county semi-final where she and her team were in the backfield and the front field was kept for the men, and we're all paying the same amount of tax, we're all equal, but that those girls aren't being treated equally, and that mentoredom affects them down the road, and that's why they have low self-esteem compared to the boys. The boys are empowered through society by GAs always. You always see it on the news. It's always leads with men. It never leads with the women, and we need to change that. And I think if we don't, the only way we'll change it is doing what we're doing, speaking out and saying it's no longer acceptable to do that. Because people always said, oh, we're too busy, we can't. But you can, and we have a duty to do it, because our little girls need to be treated the same as our boys. I mean, I see with the boys, they get huge, crowds. The girls don't get the same, but their match is just as good as the boys. So it's up to us as parents to say, listen here, we're not paying the membership fee until you start treating us equally. The GA get huge donations from the government. It's our tax, so they've got to see that it's equal funding, and funding means everything. I often heard people saying to me, not enough people go to the girls' match, but I often said I loved Cristiano Ronaldo. I'm a Man United fan, and I love
Dr. Mary Ryan was Man United.
And I often said, I remember meeting Marty Morrissey, and I said, Marty, because I in Semple Stadium, and I said to Marty, if Cristiano Ronaldo was coming to Croke Park, and if we didn't market it, nobody would be at it. But if we market it, it'll be a full house. In the same way, if you put the money into the marketing of the girls' sports, there'll be a full house, because it's very skillful, and they're putting the same level of absolutely amazing. And we need to do that. And I just think that's one area that we need to be way more equal, and I hope that happens.
I know, and there you go. That's a little an aside note, but it's supposed about empowering our kids as well, and
empowering society,
and that piece of, as parents, us being their advocate as well at that stage. But the words part, you just make it so free to say these words. Like I said to my mum, that she was obsessed by you, loves you. She couldn't be here today, but she wanted to be in the background. But she was like, Mary's not afraid to say, I was like, she couldn't even say what you say, but she's listening, and now I can say it in front of, I can see the change in even the older generation because of that education. And I would like to think then that if there was something that Mummy needed, that you could feel, that you could open up because of people like you. So you're doing an unbelievable
Thank
job.
you, Caroline. Thank you.
And I suppose and we did talk there about, perimenopause, menopause, big topic. We can't even start to get into it in this podcast where you're coming back. I know you are, but we'll do it in another one. But I want to talk about it because those words are thrown about a lot by a lot of people. But it's so it's affecting our lives so much. And there is this whole thing now, Mary, I don't know if you feel it, but nearly everything you get, you think, am I in perimenopause?
Yes, yeah.
Because there's so much information.
That's
and then
true.
if you're really tired, you're like, oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Or something. And I'm 42 now. I'm like, God, maybe I'm in perimenopause, or maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm in a bad mood, or maybe it's perimenopause.
Yeah.
But what's the story with perimenopause, menopause, like, just to give people an overview of age and what happens?
So you're absolutely right. Perimenopause is usually 45. You can get it earlier, and it lasts for about 5 years. So what happens in perimenopause is we women have periods every 28 days, usually from the age of 12, but some girls don't start till 16, so that's fine for all those people listening. And then usually at the age of 45, you notice that the periods, so the eggs are getting depleted. So eggs produce estrogen, so your eggs and the ovaries have become depleted. And the two hormones, FSH hormone and LH hormone, this is a little lesson now, in the hormone control center called the pituitary gland, that's what drives those organs, particularly the ovaries. So the FSH and LH start going up in perimenopause, and they begin to start because the estrogen is declining. So there's always a sort of a positive, negative. And as a result of that, remember I told you that gland controls all the hormones.
Yes.
So therefore, if that gland is getting tired because two major hormones are shifting upwards, you can get aches and pains in the muscles. You can begin to feel tired. You mightn't sleep as well, because remember I told you that hormones control muscles. So you have to do deep muscle relaxation. You're not going to get that. You're going to get restless legs. So you're getting restless in your sleep. So therefore, you're going to be tired, okay? You might have a bit of sweating because you're tired. It could be just because your adrenals are tired and you're getting a little bit too much adrenaline, but also because of the lower estrogen. You might have a bit of brain fog, because we know that estrogen is very important for the synapses, for the brain, for the little cells to communicate in the brain. So that could be one of the things. And you might also find a bit of bloating, because hormones control the bowel muscle. So there might be a little bit of bloating going on. And also they affect the gut hormone, or the gut microbiome, which is the bacteria, the good bacteria in the gut. So girls might notice, and women might notice, increased gas and wind at this time. So all of those symptoms are perimenopause, and everybody knows about the little bit of flushing and the sweating. So usually it's from 45 to 50. The periods can also get heavier because the progesterone is going lower, or they might become irregular, and that's all normal. But the thing is that, and you're so right, some women think they're perimenopausal and they might be just tired, and they might have thyroid symptoms, or the pituitary might be just tired because they're overdoing it. So I think it's to make sure that you're not self-diagnosing. Go to your doctor and just make sure that you're getting a proper diagnosis, or it could be something else entirely different. I mean, you might have something else. So just make sure that you go to your doctor and don't be self-diagnosing. But for perimenopause, I won't go near any treatment unless people do the basics, which are eating healthily. Like I told you, not excess caffeine, not excess sugar. We all have to do with our 2 treats a week, no more. And I always tell patients, start with the trolley. Don't be putting the 3 things in, because if they're there, we'll eat them. Again, we're all human. I'll eat them as well. So don't have them in my vicinity. And that's the reality.
Yeah.
But so do the basics right. Eat healthily. Make sure you get your sleep. Make sure you pull back a little bit. Your hormone control center is going through a lot. You've got to delegate more than you ever did. And we women are not good at doing that. So nobody will do it as well as us, remember. That's what we think. So we've got to change that. And then so the medications then that you use, some women do very well just with that. Some will need HRT because they've terrible flushing and sweating, and they're flushing in front of me when I see them. The sweat is profuse. And then in menopause, it means periods have stopped completely, and they've all those symptoms, but they have the sweating and flushing. Some women get no sweating and flushing. 20% sail through menopause, but there's some that get severe anxiety and they get no sweating and flushing, and then the others get all the other symptoms. So, and the other thing that I want to say is the vaginal dryness is huge, and the estrogen pessaries are totally safe, and you can stay on them until you're 100. They do not cause cancer, and they're very safe. So you tend to use them once a day for 2 weeks, and then twice to 3 times a week. But they really help with intimacy, because if you're dry below, that's going to help, hugely. And intimacy is important part. Kids have gone, you know, you want to have intimacy with your partner. So it's important that we talk about that and make it easier for men and women. And if he's erectile dysfunction, let's help him as well. It's all about living our best life. And I think that's the secret. And then with heart health, really important in menopause, because estrogen is reduced. So therefore, heart muscle, you know, you get the arches get much more tighter, and therefore you might have high blood pressure. Your cholesterol might go up, because it's only when estrogen drops that the genetics manifest. So if your dad had high cholesterol, that might manifest now. It didn't manifest before. And if you have that gene in the liver where you're not mopping up the bad cholesterol, it's just going to go higher and higher and higher and block those arteries to the heart, to the brain. And it's really important we start young. The brain needs oxygen. If you collapse now, I've got to resuscitate you in 3 minutes, otherwise your brain is affected. So it just tells you we don't want to be, you know, having blood following through narrowed paths to the brain. Now is the time to start. So keep your weight right. Don't be smoking. You know, again, it's about, we talk about aging, but let's control it ourselves. And, you know, keep your cholesterol normal, have your blood sugar normal, have your blood pressure normal. And around menopause, it's time to pause and look after us women. You know, look after our health, look after our bone health. Estrogen goes down, estrogen controls bone health. So have your bone bank good coming into it. Make sure that you always, you know, had your calcium and your yogurt and your cheese. But do your vitamin D as well. We don't get enough in this country. But do your resistance exercises. By doing these exercises with your dumbbells, or have a, you know, a 2 litre of milk, you release growth hormone, which helps bone. And then if you need, get your DEXA scan. Every 2 years you should be doing it in menopause. And if you need treatment, it's there. There's loads of treatment, but we don't want to see osteoporosis is where you have demineralization of bone. You have a huge risk of fracture of the lower back, of the hip, of the wrist, and these cause terrible pain, but also it affects you for life. You might have a hunched spine, you might have back pain. So why go there? Why not just, you know, take the step to prevent and get your DEXAs done, but take your vitamin D, take your calcium, make sure it's in your diet. You don't have to take it, it's in your diet. And I forgot to mention magnesium. Yeah. Terrific for brain health, terrific to relax your muscles, and it's so important. So all of those things are really, really important. And hydration, really important for us women, because for men and women it's really important, because bowel need it, and the bowel, remember, produces most of our serotonin. So your bowel should be going every day, not every second day. And a lot of people, the problem is they're not getting the 2 litres of water in, and you can't be getting in before you go to bed. It's in the morning, you know, up to 6 o'clock you should be getting your 2 litres in.
There's a lot to think about here, Mary, now. But you know what I'm thinking when you're saying all of that? I'm like, God help women years ago that didn't know all this, because they were battling with how this was, and they were thinking there was something wrong with them, when it was all very, not like, it's great that people are starting to talk about it now.
Yes, totally.
And it's great that we're educated, because it might sound like a lot, but basically we're saying the basic principles there about exercise, drinking water. Like, we're making, you know, when you say it all like that, you're like, oh my God, that's a lot of work that I have to do in myself. But actually, it's what we all should be doing anyway.
Totally.
But the perimenopause, menopause is such a huge part of our lives that we go through. We can't ignore that this is happening.
No.
And our partners need to be in on the conversation too.
Totally. And it's a positive thing. We've another 50 years left, remember.
Yes.
That's the way we need to change it. You know, I think women see it as a negative thing. It's not. And I think all the women that have gone before us have shown us that. I still see women coming into me looking fabulous in their 80s and 90s. And I love to see women do that, put that effort in to look after themselves, because years ago women didn't. And I think it's lovely now that women are enjoying that 50 years where they don't have to worry about getting pregnant. You know, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
And they're just really looking after themselves. Their kids are probably done for. And it's the next 50 years now of being healthily, but taking that personal responsibility to be healthy. That's the best you could do for yourself and your family.
Absolutely. This is going to empower so many people that are listening, because, you know, I say it in my own mummy, you know, I don't want her to think, I'm not saying she does, but sometimes she would say the odd negative thing about Oxshire. Like, she'd love to get her kitchen done up, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, Oxshire, for all the time I have left, I'm only 70. You know, she's probably killing me now for saying 70, but and I'm like, Mummy,
another 26,
30 years.
Yeah.
Let's enjoy a new kitchen if you want it, you know. But I suppose it's important, women, like you say, 50 years a lifetime.
Absolutely.
You know, let's enjoy.
And we're not coming back. So we have to do it. We have to do it for ourselves, as well as our families want us around as well, remember?
I know.
But we have to do it for ourselves first.
And men, like my daddy'd say that negative talk, like, for all I have, all the time I have left. And I'm like, you're in the prime. He's loving life out in his retirement, out still dictating and giving off. But I mean, he's out in the farm, but he has this mindset of the time is not that but you know, anybody could be gone tomorrow, as you know, with everything that's happened to you. So
Totally.
hopefully there's a lot of people empowered, men and women.
Totally. And that generation are amazing to their grandchildren.
Yeah.
I see the benefit my children had from their grandparents.
Yes.
And they don't realise the really positive effect. You know, look at all the lovely, they show so much to them.
Yeah.
And they you know, they can give so much love to them. I think that's so important. That love that grandparents have for grandchildren and vice versa.
Yeah, and we want our children to see their grandparents like loving life, embracing life.
And living for as long as possible.
I know, because my wee girl Tess will say, I wonder what Granny's going to wear today, because my mummy always likes to dress up like yourself. And, you know, I love that she sees that in her and all. It's great. Mary, this series, now, we just skimmed all of that, because if you go into one topic, then we're talking
absolutely.
about it. But maybe that's scope for me and you reuniting again. But I wanted to know, and I'm asking everybody this at the end of each podcast, this series, what's the best piece of advice? Now, I'm sure you've been given lots of advice and you've given lots. What's the best thing that you kind of live by, a piece of advice? Maybe someone said it to you, or maybe it's something you tell other people. What is kind of your mantra?
My mantra.
I feel it already, but what is it?
My mantra is just to love yourself. You know, we've only one life, and it's our personal responsibility to live our best life. And by doing that, we're really helping humanity. We're empowering others. A lot of other people might be in a bad place. They look at us making the best of it, and we're bringing them up with us. And I think, you know, if you can live your best life for yourself, but you're also helping others, show them that positive energy. I'm a great absorber of energy. I feel negative energy very quickly, but I throw out a lot of positive. And I think my thing is love yourself, look after yourself, nourish yourself to full health, and bring as many along with you as you can in doing that, and, you know, help them to live their best lives too.
Oh my God, I love it. And we're going to write that in the show notes for anybody who needs to read that again. In the show notes, Mary, we're going to link your book, your social media handles, because that's where you're hanging out, and you're very busy now. You're going to do lots of events and speaking. We need to get you more up north.
Oh,
Will
definitely.
you come up north to us?
We're going to do that empowering event together, remember?
We definitely are. So for everybody that's listening, we've got a scope across the whole country, but definitely because I'm from Tyrone, there's a lot of people from up north. So we need you up there as well. You're doing amazing things. I am honoured to have you on the Dig podcast.
Thank you, Carla.
And thank you for being my guest today.
Thank you. You're doing great things too, by the way.
Thank you so much.
So well done.